Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Asa Hutchinson, Governor of Arkansas, Chairman of the National Governors Association.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill, and I want to thank all the governors who are here. My, what a great attendance of governors right here in our opening session. Thank you for being here. And I did want to take a point of personal privilege. The anthem singer that just sang our wonderful national anthem, that's D.C. Washington. He's from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. He now resides in the Washington, D.C. area, but he's been a friend for a long time, and he just does an outstanding job. I'm very proud of him and our relationship. It's an honor for me to serve as chair of this year, and Bill in his introduction failed to mention one thing, and that is that under Arkansas law, we have 2 4-year terms, and I am term limited at the end of this year. Now, I make the case that my grandson plays basketball at the collegiate level, and he gets an extra year because of COVID. And so I think that all of us governors ought to have an extra year of eligibility. But there might be a few people that object to this. I want to express my appreciation to the Vice Chair, Phil Murphy. He is tied up in snow duty in his state, obviously what a governor does, but he's been a good partner, and wanted to extend my well wishes to him on behalf of all the governors for what the Northeast is going through right now. Hope he'll be in later today. I also thank the Executive Committee and the task forces that are leading so well, and you put in extra hours, so thank you for that. Bill McBride, by the way, has done a great job of organizing this, has done a good job as Executive Director, and let's express our appreciation to him as well. Governors have proven to be a powerful voice in our nation over the last 2 years particularly, but in a whole host of issues. And education is an issue that we lead on and that brings us together. We're all supportive of improving the education of our young people. Today, we have a historical opportunity as governors to prepare our young people to succeed in the digital world in which they live. And that is the reason I chose as my chairman's initiative to work with you to expand K-12 computer science education. This matters. It matters to our state, to our young people, and to our nation. With 609,000 open computing jobs nationwide, they're needed. But it's also a national security issue that we face. The options are simple. We can either fall behind as a nation if we do not have the computing skills of the future, or we can borrow the talent from overseas and say we're just going to utilize that, which is not a good option. And the third option, of course, is to produce our own talent, and that is what we're trying to do as governors. It's a national security issue because of the cyber threats that we face as well. And so as a result of that, when I became governor in 2015, we passed a law, first of all, to mandate that computer science be offered in every high school in Arkansas. It did not take long to us to say we got to incorporate our lower grades in the curriculum for computer science. But we didn't require anyone to take it. It was offered. And so, yes, as governor, I went to over 80 high schools. I knocked on doors. I talked to students and say, we need your talent. We need to have you taking computer science. As a result, we had 1,100 students approximately taking computer science in 2015 when this initiative started. That is now over 13,000 students in Arkansas taking computer science. That's a 770% increase. And the number of young women enrolled has jumped from 294 up, increase of 1,300%. Minority students have gone from 600 to 5,212, an increase of 700%, and on down the list. Most importantly, teachers, instructors have gone from less than 20 in Arkansas to almost 600. That is essential to get the job done. I love the story of the French teacher who said, well, if I can teach French, surely I can learn computers and coding. It's just another language. Well, she did, and she's made a difference in students' lives. Last year, I signed into legislation a law that requires at least one computer science course in order to graduate from high school. Now, only South Carolina and Nevada joined Arkansas, and they preceded us, to their credit. So there's 3 states now that require that. And so this will also require, the law will require every high school to employ at least one certified computer science teacher. We're investing money in that every day. And I want to thank code.org for their leadership that really measures us nationally and is sort of the national voice to expand computer science education. And Cameron Wilson, I believe, is here today, Chief Operating Officer. Cameron, thank you for your work. Please give Cameron a round of applause. Now, we're interested in creating jobs, and so sure we want to educate them, but I'm thinking this lead to technology jobs in Arkansas. And I had an opportunity this last year to go to Israel. And as I went to Israel, I got to speak at the Future of Mobility Conference led by the Prime Minister. And there we had the Minister of Transportation for Israel spoke first and said that we're trying to get passed in the Knesset a law to allow piloting of autonomous vehicles. And I said, I knew that was the clue, that was the opening I needed. I got to follow her and say that in Arkansas, we passed that same law in 2019, and today we are not only piloting, but we're using autonomous vehicles without a safety driver for the delivery of goods from the warehouse to the store. That is what technology can do. That's the talent pool that we have to fill. These jobs of the future, including autonomous vehicles, and the computer science need that we have is illustrated by the fact that it is mandatory for students to take computer science in 44 countries. But in the United States, it is only offered in 51% of our high schools. So we do have a lot to do. Let me move quickly because we have a very distinguished panel that I want to introduce the moderator in shortly. But I want to offer you 4 keys that is important for us being successful in computer science education. One is you can do it through your Commissioner of Education or your Secretary of Education or by executive order as an option to increase computer science education. We chose the legislative route because it gives you a broader level of support to initiate it and to fund it. And that's the second admonition I would have is have a dedicated funding stream. Small state like Arkansas, we're putting $5 million it started with every biennium. We've increased that amount, but that allows the stipends for teachers to pay for professional development. It allows money for students to take, if they pass an AP computer science course and test well on it, they get some money out of it. And so it's really been helpful. Have a dedicated funding stream. Have a state office and a dedicated office geared toward computer science. We have that in Arkansas. And then lead in it. You either have to be out there or you have to have your Commissioner of Education working on this day in and day out. The story in Arkansas, of course, is if you're a superintendent, don't get a call from the governor because the governor is asking them how many students they have taking computer science. And I did that. Let me outline 5 policy goals because I believe when you have an initiative, you ought to be able to measure it. And so the goals are, first of all, we want as a nation to increase the number of high schools offering computer science. Secondly, we want to increase the number of governors who are members of our Governors for Computer Science. I believe we have 15 now. We want to increase the amount of state funding for computer science education. We can measure that. We want to increase the number of states that require at least one computer science credit for high school graduation. Right now there's 3. I hope that we can convene again, we can measure progress. And to increase the diversity of students that participate in computer science. It needs to be for everyone. So in support of this initiative, we're going to have 3 regional roundtables and spend time on this topic at our summer meeting as well. We've already been to Denver. Great to be there and talk about computer science. A number of governors were there. We'll also be in Bentonville, Arkansas, and then we will be also in Boston, Massachusetts, Governor Baker hosting us there. So I hope that you'll either be there or send someone representing your state. And then we also, at this winter meeting, the NGA will be sharing with you a draft compact for governors to review that'll be focused on committing to expand access to computer science education in our states. We'll unveil that statement with the signatories at the summer meeting as we conclude this initiative at that time. Governors can lead in this area. We have 15 members in our Governor's Caucus for this. We want to grow that, and you can help us to do it. And so with that, I hope that you can sense a level of excitement on my part. I believe that we as governors can make a difference in our state and for our nation and for our future. Thank you again for your support of this. I always get choked up when I talk about computer science. But now let me introduce a real friend of the NGA, a former governor that makes us very proud to work with her, who is now the Secretary of Commerce. And we like to see governors move into those high positions. And Governor Secretary Gina Raimondo has agreed to moderate this panel, and Gina will be introducing our distinguished panelists as they come. And so, Secretary Raimondo, please come on up. Let's give her a round of welcome. And I want to turn the microphone over to her, but before you have the microphone, there is going to be a video about this computer science initiative, and then it's all yours, Secretary Raimondo, and thank you again for leading this panel today. Will it be American students who learn to code? Or will industry be required to go overseas to find the talent that we need here in the United States of America? My initiative is K-12 computer science education. The need has never been greater. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, between now and 2029, computer science and technology jobs will grow by 11%. And a computer science major can earn up to 40% more than the average college graduate. Elementary students who study computer science basics outperform their peers in reading and writing. The conclusion is that computer science or coding is now a foundational part of education. The goal of this initiative is to make sure that U.S. students can meet the needs of industry and we don't have to rely upon skilled workers from overseas, or the other option is offshoring technology jobs. But it takes the governors to be engaged in this, it takes national leadership, and it takes a new direction in education. And for those reasons, I'm investing my time in an initiative that was important and is important for Arkansas, but it's really important across the board for our country. The option that I advocate is that we produce the talent right here in the United States of America.
Good morning. Good morning. It's great to be here with everybody. I see so many familiar faces. I have to say I miss you guys. Being a governor is still the best job in American politics, and you've had a hard job these past couple of years, so thank you all for your service. I especially want to recognize Asa for your incredible work on this very important issue. In fact, when I was governor, Asa and I partnered on this together. Providing computer science education to young people is bipartisan. This has nothing to do with politics. This is about closing the digital divide, closing the opportunity divide, and making sure that every young person has the skills they need to get a job in the now, modern jobs, innovation jobs. So I give you a huge amount of credit, Governor. I'd give you another year if it were up to me. But I think you're right, a few people might not like that. But the statistics that you just shared were extraordinary. And it just shows when the governor focuses on something and prioritizes something, you can have results. So thank you for your leadership. I am continuing the work of closing the digital divide in my new role as Secretary of Commerce. In the bipartisan infrastructure law, there is $65 billion dedicated to delivering broadband, high-speed, affordable broadband to every single American. And the Commerce Department is the department primarily responsible for implementing the broadband initiative. And we look forward to working with every single one of you. There are people in every one of your states who don't have broadband. Particularly those of you, obviously, with rural lands and tribal lands, all of you, as I'm looking around here, this too is bipartisan. So I very much want to work closely with you. The program is designed to provide flexibility for governors to take into account the fact that every state is different. And so we want to work with you. In addition to the money to lay fiber and build the infrastructure, there's also a digital equity initiative, and that is to provide digital literacy training, computers, hardware. So I would just say to you, start thinking about this now. I have another session later this afternoon. I hope you can come. We can get into the details. 50% of people living on tribal lands don't have access to broadband. A third of Americans living in rural communities don't have access to broadband. I come from Rhode Island. There's no rural Rhode Island. It's an urban, it's a city state. So technically, there's fiber everywhere, but for many, it's unaffordable. And so that's where the equity component comes into it. So the mission we have together, and I'd ask you to start thinking now about what it will take in your states to bring high quality, affordable broadband and connect everybody, because the mission at the end of this is every American is covered. I am joined this morning by three unbelievable leaders of American business, each of whom I know and have had the opportunity to get to know in my role as Secretary of Commerce, and each of whom is deeply committed to closing the digital divide, making sure that everybody, boys and girls, people of color, people in low-income communities, has access to broadband, computers, technology, and digital skills. And I couldn't be more honored to have each and every one of you. So I first would like to give you all a chance to introduce yourself. I'm going to start with you, Corie, the CEO of Best Buy.
Good morning, everyone. I am Corie Berry. I am, as Julie said, the CEO of Best Buy, the largest specialty electronics retailer in the U.S., and it's just a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Julie Sweet, CEO of Accenture.
Great. It's great to be here today. Really excited about the topic. We do see the creation of talent in the U.S. as a shared responsibility among governments and the private sector. And so we appreciate being included in this important dialogue. And we have over 60,000 people in the U.S. We hire roughly 10,000 a year. We're a global company, about $50 billion in revenue with over 500,000 people around the world. And so today, we're very acutely aware of the security, the focus on talent across industry and across the globe, and the opportunity we have together to do something very special in the U.S. And I'm really excited to be part of this dialogue.
Thank you. And Beth Ford, CEO of Land O'Lakes.
Well, good morning. First of all, Governor Hutchinson, thank you for your initiative and your leadership in this critical area. And thank you, Secretary Raimondo. As she notes, we have been in dialogue about what this will take. Land O'Lakes is both a Fortune 200 company, but also a farmer-owned cooperative. 100-year anniversary just this past year. We retain farmer ownership. So we touch half the harvested acres in America, 25% of the farmers, but our members and a lot of our business, though we do business across the United States, and we have businesses in South Africa and China and Mexico and Canada and everything, but our businesses touch 10,000 plus rural communities. We started the American Connection Project, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, which is all about awareness, advocacy, action, about making sure broadband accessibility is central to policy, and also that action is taken to close this digital divide. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, and it will be with that kind of view from our chair of what we are seeing and what we have seen in the activities we've been undertaking in rural America.
Great, great, great. So we're going to have some dialogue here, and then we'll throw it open to you guys to ask us questions. So I'll start with you, Beth. You have been a vocal advocate for broadband. You have a lot of, you're in the middle of the country. You've talked a lot about the digital divide in rural communities. Just tell us a little bit about why you think this is so important and what you see, particularly among small farmers, and how they have been missing out because they don't have broadband.
Yeah, it's such an important question. So I took over as CEO in 2018, and of course I'm always out in the country with our members. I continually remind folks that American farmers, 90+% of farms are still family owned. These are families, right? 90% of farmers could be considered hobby farmers because they make most of their income off farm. So these technology jobs are central not just to farm efficiency and ag efficiency, but to the future of job creation. So when I was named CEO, I was in the country and obviously with our members. And it's, while we're based in Minnesota, shout out for Governor Walz, you know, while we're based in Minnesota, we are across the country. And so it's not a monolith. I see these same issues in the Southeast, in minority communities. I see this in most rural communities. A lack of opportunity, job creation lags, roads and bridges deteriorating, closure of rural hospitals, so no access to health care, education outcomes, folks not going to college because they don't have access to education. You know, 78% of counties in America that index as food insecure are in rural America. There's a lack of housing. I mean, so there's a deteriorating infrastructure. Now, I'm a girl from Iowa originally, right? So these are towns that I have been in my entire life, though I spent quite a bit of my time as an adult in cities. And what I would note with all of those issues, what was foundational is that the base, I guess, accelerant for changing this environment, technology, broadband access, was just not present. I would go into some of these farms, and it was like the old day of the rabbit ears. You know, you're trying to get your TV set. I don't want to date myself, but you know, you're trying to get the rabbit ears set up. It's simply unacceptable. They're trying to go to next to a school bus to access wireless or you know, so that their kids can do their homework on their phones. It leaves us less competitive, and I don't think it's an overstatement to say that it is a national security issue. How do you create jobs, and how do you have food security for a nation if you don't have the best technology, if we're not investing? So this has been a push. This is where our members are. These are where families are, where jobs need to be created. There are mental health challenges. I mean, I could go through the litany. But what we know is foundationally, we have to get technology and access. We must get broadband and wireless available in these communities so that they can stabilize and they can do the work that they need to do.
Yeah, thank you so much for your advocacy. Julie, you have spoken a great deal and written a great deal about the changes to the workplace because of the pandemic. So I would love to hear from you as a CEO of a large global company. What are the changes to the workplace, in your view, due to the pandemic, and how do you think those changes affect the need for digital skills among your workforce going into the future?
Great, well, it's a great question. One thing I'll add to Beth's comment, and I know we'll get to the idea of job creation, but it's very much tied to the change in the workforce, which is pre-pandemic, many companies did not want their people off-site. So Accenture is, one of the most remote working companies in the world. That is, we serve global companies, we've done teams. So pre-pandemic, this was how we worked. We haven't had a headquarters in 3 decades. And I used to have CEOs say, how is that possible? The pandemic hit and they said, okay, no, Julie, really, how is that possible? Because I can't have my people together. But that fundamental change of the acceptance of being able to have remote workers immediately opens opportunities for rural communities to become sources of talent and access jobs that didn't exist before. And so I would underscore that we'll never be able to capture that opportunity unless we do have broadband there and be able to do that. And so as you think about, what's happened today, pre-pandemic, talent was the #1 priority for all CEOs across companies. There was already, as Governor Hutchinson said, a gap in computer science, right? Post-pandemic, the skills needed, the more advanced skills have increased the gap about 3 times because of the massive acceleration of companies into the cloud and using technology. And to give you just some sense of that, we had a $12 billion cloud business. 12 months later, it was an $18 billion cloud business, right? Because of what companies are doing. And so that has massively increased the advanced skills, but when you couple it with the new ways of working, there really isn't any place in a company that doesn't require digital skills, whether you are an executive assistant working in the mailroom, on a plant floor, in field service. And just to make this real, if you take Accenture for a moment, if you want to apply to Accenture, it was true pre-pandemic, by the way, all applications are online. The interviews are online. Once you are hired, you get to experience something called Countdown to Accenture, where all of the things to excite you about joining Accenture and all onboarding is done in an automated fashion, completely touchless. This was all, by the way, pre-pandemic. You never go into an office and fill out a form. If you are not able, regardless of your job, to navigate all that, you can't work at Accenture. Once you start at Accenture, your onboard training includes experiencing the digital world of One Accenture Park, which is entirely in the metaverse, where you learn the valuable information about Accenture and you begin to create new experiences with your colleagues. 6 months after you start, you're required to begin a 10-course technology curriculum. We call it Raising Your TQ, where you have to do the course and pass an assessment around artificial intelligence, security, agile ways of working. And this is true regardless of where you work at Accenture, because we are operating our company using these technologies. And we believe as a company that we have to be not just a talent consumer, but a talent creator. And so we have that commitment. But not every company has the ability to do that. And so what we're talking to companies about is how do they get the kids for all of their jobs that have these skills? And that's why computer science as a part of that of the curriculum in K-12 is so clear. Not every kid graduating will go to college, but every kid is entering a digital economy. And so this is a new foundational skill that's critical that we don't leave anyone behind and that we continue to meet the talent needs of our companies.
Thank you. I mean, that is quite a statement. There's not a single job in the company that doesn't require digital skills. And I suspect you guys may agree in your businesses. So Corie, I know you spend a lot of time thinking about young people. By the way, we became very good friends when she taught me that how to do the parental controls on Xbox. So if any of you have teenage boys
I'll
like
teach
I
classes
do,
later.
if any of you have teenage boys like I do and you want a tip, go to Corie. But anyway, how do you assess the need, or how do you assess the challenge of providing computer science and digital literacy skills to all students in elementary school and high school? How do you see it? And what do you think we can do, you know, if you're a governor here, to make sure that we are doing a better job providing these skills for young people, since it is so essential?
Yeah, thank you, Secretary Raimondo, and thank you, Governor Hutchinson, for a chance. I think you're going to see that all three of us coming from very different industries, and yet a very consistent thread that the tech skills of the future are required across every aspect of what we're doing. And we also hire completely by video. That wasn't pre-pandemic, but it's now. So that's not just a high-tech consultative institution, that's a retailer of 100,000 people in all of your communities who's functioning completely differently overnight. Let me take a little bit of a step back here. Why would a retailer be on stage? At Best Buy, we believe that our purpose is to enrich lives through technology. Not a tagline, a real purpose. And you all know when the pandemic hit, that became life. Every one of us was at home, hopefully on a device, if we had one. Hopefully with broadband, if we had it. I think for most of us in this room, that was pretty easy. However, in that moment, singularly, the tech inequities, particularly in disinvested communities, was highlighted instantly. The amount of kids that fell 1-2 years behind in the span of 2 to 3 months was immense, and it happened overnight. And because we have 100,000 employees, we are in all of your communities. Our employees run the gamut in every way. And what we were seeing is even some of our own employees struggling and falling behind with their own kids and their own families. And one of the things that we have been investing in at Best Buy pre-pandemic and have really doubled down on is our teen tech centers. To your question about what specifically can we do? Our teen tech centers are centers for after-school education, and what do they provide? They provide access, because everybody has aptitude, and not everybody has access. And in the tech centers, we have things like AR, VR, so I can learn about the metaverse. We have, of course, computers and laptops, but we have sound mixing, fashion design, production assistance. It is access to those tools, but importantly, those careers, those aspirations that you may never think about if you've never seen them as potential. There are centers that are created in partnership with community not-for-profit organizations. So we've got community organizations that know the kids, they know the families, they know the specific situations, and they can help mentor kids through not just learning how to use these products, but thinking about them as career pipelines. We're starting at 7th grade. So we have kids who come into the centers twice a week, 7th grade, 2-3 hours a night, and are starting to learn about where their path could take them. We've also layered on actually mental wellness constituencies as well, because what we're seeing is, especially in some of the disadvantaged communities, it's not just about access, it's also about, do I have a safe space? Do I feel like I have a safe future? And that combination then means every kid who's going through these centers has a plan, a distinct plan. It might be for a 6-month certification, a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, and then scholarships that go with that. Because what we're missing is pipelines. I think all of us, and I've already had a chance to chat with a couple of you, all of us are looking for pipelines of talent. And to create that pipeline, you need to start early, you need to have mentorship and help, and then you need to pipeline that talent back into your organizations. And that is distinctly what this kind of a model is allowing us to do. We have 47 of these across the US. We promise to have 100 by 2025. That will serve 30,000 young people and pipe them right back into the organizations. And so we can take some of what they're learning in school, apply it tactically using the devices, and then pipeline that talent back back into our organizations. And I think it's this, what you can see is like attacking the issue at every angle is what's going to be required, and I hope presents really unique opportunities for public-private partnerships with each of you as we think about how to bring this to life in each of your communities, because the problems across the communities are quite different.
Yeah, thank you for your leadership on that. I would say from my own experience doing this in Rhode Island, the public-private partnership is vital in general in what the governors do, but in digital literacy specifically. We partnered with Microsoft, for example, and other companies, but we needed tech companies to help teach teachers. The rate limiting factor in delivering computer science teaching is a lot, and you know, Asa, a lot of cases is the teachers need to be taught the skills. They need to have the curriculum. And we really needed to partner with the private sector to do that. Also, it needs to be relevant for these young people. Not just learning to code, you know, it has to be connected to a job, to something they care about. And that's where we need the private sector to step up.
And relevant to the communities. One of the things that we're testing is a community impact hub in LA County that will have 12 teen tech centers anchored at the entertainment industry specifically. Because in the entertainment industry, think about when you see the credit scroll, it's like 1 page of actors and then 6 pages of all the technical expertise required to bring that to life. In that case, we're creating certifications that will take them right back into some of those trade skills in LA County, because of course the entertainment industry is also looking for pipelines of diverse talent. So to your point, it has to be very tailored as well to the communities, because each community, part of what we're highlighting, and then the private sector needs are very different depending on the industry.
You know, I think it is going to take these partnerships, public-private, but we just announced an initiative in Aberdeen, South Dakota. So you say the relevance of where you are in this geography. We wanted to first make sure we highlighted broadband access. We're partnered with Corie, and we want digital skills development in that community to create jobs in Aberdeen, South Dakota that are tech jobs, right? First, we were partnered with Microsoft. We're partnered with Corie, partnered with the agencies. We're doing the same thing in Central Valley of California, where we are using our silos in our farms or in our plants to stand up wireless, beam it out more broadly, and then working on job development and job creation. Once we have the foundational access, it is about how can we make sure that we have what we call swap programs, where we're having our members or having others in the community be able to have tech jobs and do that remotely. I know that's a central thing that you're doing, Julie, in your initiatives. And some of them, by the way, I want to thank these two because they're partnered with us as well in our initiative called the American Connection Project, where we have over 170 different companies, large organizations focused on awareness, advocacy, taking action, free wireless locations, job creation, all in technology. And these two organizations, it's more powerful when we're working together, and I think your initiative on job creation in this area is critical.
So I might then add is that, you know, when I heard your 4 tenets, Governor Hutchinson, I immediately thought, well, but you need a 5th. And that is state by state, we need to build a coalition of the private sector and the not-for-profits, because we use them a lot to support these programs at the same time. That allows you to be tailored to the needs of the communities, but it's integrated from the beginning into the program. And the reality is there is a blueprint. We could rapidly work together to say, these are the 5 things you need from the private sector: the technology teaching, the work around apprentices. We have in Chicago, for example, over 40 companies who came together in a network that we established to provide apprenticeships. Right there is so much, the tech teen centers, right, the work you're doing. It's not rocket science. It needs to be tailored by community, but what you need, the apprenticeships, the jobs, the teaching is the same. And many of us are in multiple communities, right? We're in 36 cities in terms of actual presence. We work across the state so that you could actually access that. And so I think this would be something that certainly we would be, and I think the Business Roundtable and other groups would be happy to partner with the NGA on saying, here's the blueprint, it's your 5th tenet, and how do you execute that?
It's a great idea. I will say to the governors, I mentioned earlier the initiative that the Commerce Department will be putting out for broadband, the $65 billion, we are specifically going to design that so that it provides you with flexibility to spend some of the money on job training, digital training, and, as I said, digital literacy. So as you're putting together your state plans, don't think of it as just money for fiber or money for fixed wireless. It's also money for devices. What good is it if you have broadband in your school or your house, but you don't have a device? And also, like I said, digital literacy. I want to stick with you, Julie. You just mentioned apprenticeships, which is something I'm going to take a guess every governor here would like to do more of. You are an unbelievable leader on apprenticeships. When we all think of apprenticeships, still we think mostly of the building trades. Julie is a leader on digital apprenticeships, white-collar apprenticeships. Can you tell us what you've done, how you've been so successful, and what can governors do to expand high-wage, high-skill apprenticeships in their states?
Great, thanks. And I know it's a passion that you share. And one of the things, I just want to give a shout out to Secretary Raimondo, because when we talk about apprenticeships, because you understand what happens on the ground, the flexibility in terms of what we were talking about in your support. Well, Julie, I know they need childcare, and the ability to use federal funds to provide the actual things that are needed as opposed to narrow is really powerful. And so I just so appreciate your bringing that perspective, because when you're making these things successful, it's understanding the reality of what people go through. So in 2016, I became CEO of North America, my prior job in 2015, and I come from a background, my father painted cars for a living. And from my perspective, the only way to really help people from diverse backgrounds, socioeconomic, all kinds of diversity, is you need a job. And I felt like I lived the American dream, and we really wanted to think about how could we at Accenture provide pathways for people from different backgrounds into what we knew would be the best jobs in the digital economy. And so we started with 5 apprentices in Chicago, and we partnered with the community college, Wright College, that focuses on technology. We helped them with their curriculum, and we brought in our first 5. And it was successful, and then we said, well, how do we scale this, right? And we went after it in 2 ways. First, we said, at Accenture, we will make apprenticeships part of our talent strategy. Not because we weren't at the time, we could hire anybody, and today we can hire anybody, but because we said the only way to scale is if it becomes part of the talent strategy, which required me to have our business leaders agree and then change HR. And so we started in 2016. Today, we literally announced last week that 20% of our entry-level hiring will be apprenticeships. Last year, it was 15%. We have graduated almost 800 apprentices. These are apprentices doing security. They're doing programming. They're working at clients. They're working internally. We have 550 currently working, and that will be expanding. And so we've gone from a pilot, right, to it being part of our actual talent strategy. And the key pieces of this was that, first of all, we formed a coalition with not-for-profits in each of the communities. So after we started in Chicago, we were about to open in many of your states another 8 innovation hubs. And so we said, in every state, in every city that we open an innovation hub, we will start an apprenticeship program. In each of those cities, we then identified the not-for-profits who would be able to support our apprentices and the schools that would be able to do so. We started with 2 years schools, and then in 2019, we began to do this for high school students. The high schools where we go to first are the ones with computer science. So we have a young man named Taylor in Atlanta. He was at a school that has computer science. He's come in, he's already spent 5 months, he's at Accenture, he's incredibly talented, and at the end of his senior year, he'll be offered a job at Accenture, or he's work ready, right? In his case, he's now so excited that he wants to go to college, right, and work at Accenture, and extend into our apprenticeship program, which is an earn and learn one, right? So the success for it requires companies to be committed, part of their talent strategy, but then get the support of the schools, right, who will either change their curriculum, provide computer science, right? And then we're starting to now expand to work with our clients, right, to say, well, let us support you. Here's the types of jobs. And we've created in every, and this is why your point is so important, in every community there are different kinds of jobs, but they're repeatable. Almost everybody has an IT department, right? And so how you tailor to the market, but also bring what is repeatable, right? And there's so much out there now, and that I would encourage all of you as you're thinking about how to scale is to not reinvent the wheel and to tap into some of the initiatives that are being done, like at the Business Roundtable, to be able to see what is repeatable, and then how do you create the coalition in each of your communities to support that. But it does begin with having educational institutions who will work with the private sector to adjust the curriculum and to provide the opportunities for the students to have the skills to be eligible.
Yeah, again, public-private partnerships.
Yeah.
And thank you for leaning forward on that. Speaking of that, Beth, tell us about the American Connection. Did I get that right? American Connection Project.
American Connection Project. So to the point made, it takes more than one voice. And so the American Connection Project was formed actually at the beginning of the pandemic, though even before that, we had recognized, as I was mentioning, the need for us to really advocate for a major investment. We believe access, broadband, is a fundamental right. And that's the way we need to think of it. It's like electricity being available. And so we started by, during the pandemic, contacting the Mayo, and then really sent letters to all of your offices saying what's going to happen is, since these rural hospitals have shut down, we need technology access for medical visits. With that, we need variances from your office that say, telemedicine, those appointments, you can write a prescription without being in person. You can see a mental health care provider. By the way, 90% of mental health care providers are in suburban and urban areas. They're not in rural areas. So there's no access. So how do you see somebody? And there's a real mental health challenge in rural communities. So we went through that, and then we partnered with the Mayo, the Cleveland Clinic, and really we started this kind of convening. Now we have over 170 organizations. These two organizations are part of that. And it really is around advocacy, action, talking about policy. Now, that was successful. We were pushing for that infrastructure bill. We then followed that with the American Connection Core, because as we get to implementation, this is going to be about boots on the ground. Who do you call? How do you make the connections? What is the Chamber of Commerce around job creation and then technology? What ISP provider is there? We don't know. What's the state policy? I would, by the way, recommend, what we see is 29 states have an Office of Broadband in the governor's office as part of the administration, and others, they tend to make more rapid progress on implementation. That's just a note. We see that pretty close in. We started the American Connection Core. These are fellows. These are young people who went to college who want to be back in their rural communities. They want they want access. They want to be there. Not everybody wants to, to run to the city or the coast. They want to be in their community. And so the opportunity is to have a fellowship, 2 years. They are in their community. They take the baton, and they're working on the implementation, connected to providers, connected to public and private companies. We're partnered with Microsoft, et cetera. So that plus job creation with Corie and others, that's the way we're really making sure we have implementation with folks. We've got 50 fellows right now. We'd like to scale that to other communities so that we have real people who are able to take the baton, who get trained, who can be their Chamber of Commerce in the future. They want to be back in their communities. They want to be back with their families. And this provides them that opportunity and an opportunity to do something really meaningful.
It's awesome. And again, with the infrastructure law that we'll be implementing, huge opportunities.
Right.
Because we have the money now to partner with you and the governors to get the implementation right. Corie, when you were speaking, I noted that several times you commented that you are looking not only for a digitally trained workforce, but a diverse pool of talent. And that came through loudly and clearly. Talk about that. Why does that matter? Why is that so important? And what can we do to make sure that that diverse but trained pool is available?
Yeah, diversity is good for business, and diversity reflects all of your communities. That's reality. And I always get frustrated. This happens sometimes in Minneapolis. Beth and I are both from Minnesota. I'll be talking to other CEOs, not Beth, and they'll say something like, well, we don't have enough diverse talent. We need to bring some talent into the community. No, we have plenty of diverse talent. We are not creating the pipelines into our organizations. And so this combination platter that all of us are talking about, access being crucial, job creation being crucial, and then a real individualized approach to how you create pipelines within your communities. And what really matters in a pipeline creation, one, and this is why I appreciate Governor Hutchinson's work, start early. We have to start with kids early so they just start to, and I love this example of speaking a language. It's just speaking a different language. How do you start early so you just get that exposure? Two, the reason we're passionate about the teen tech centers is mentorship is crucial. How does a teen, in this case, understand what could be in their future in terms of roles? And these aren't just, I think we always think about tech-dependent roles, like cybersecurity or some of the real dependent roles. These are just tech-reliant roles. It was interesting, I was looking at a stadium build and I was doing a tour, and it used to be the stadium build was all about the construction. Now the stadium build is all about the fiber optics. Think about how we watch games. It's all about the connections, and that whole thing is connected. That job is now incredibly tech-reliant and different than it's ever been historically, and the vast majority of kids, particularly those who might not have access, have no idea that those careers exist. So this mentorship layer and partnering with community organizations becomes incredibly important to this personalized approach. Because it may be I want to go back to my rural home. Growing up rural, I can go back to my dad's home, and that's still not very good access to broadband there. And they may want to go back and have careers there. So this is the second piece. The third is just really understanding what a career could look like. Apprenticeship programs are so important here because it can bring to life a career you never thought was possible. So how do you actually say, no, it's not just about computer programming. It could be about everything from working in entertainment to teaching. All of these are very different and all very tech reliant. And then finally, really presenting examples of people who are living the life. How can you see what you could be? We find it very powerful in the teen tech centers. Many of our employees mentor and have relationships in those teen tech centers because they can show those that are participating just what these careers could look like. And then from there, it's a real plan. Whether that's an apprenticeship, we've been doing some work, thank you, Julie, to your team. We've been doing some work to create real certified apprenticeship, and we're actually working with the governor's office in Minnesota to create, again, a public-private partnership where those could be certified mentorships and then ultimately apprenticeships that come and are certified and come back into Best Buy. Or whether that's in our case, even sometimes using our own employee base. We have 100,000 employees, many of which in our stores are young. And how do we use a great Geek Squad agent, train them up within our company, and bring them back into our corporate infrastructure, into some of the data and analytics jobs? These real distinct plans and paths, I think, is really important. My general point about pipelining is it has to be very hands-on, and it has to also be embodied in a commitment from the organization to create the full spectrum of the pipeline. Grab them young, mentor them along, get certifications, 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees. We offer scholarships across all those, and then bring them back into our companies. And I don't care if they go to Julie's company, I don't care if they go to Beth's, but bring them back in a real concerted way. And then you're doing absolutely what's good for business, and at the same time, making our communities incredibly more robust and healthy.
Yeah. I love the clear statement, diversity is good for business. With that clear statement, then we can figure out the tactics. So in this regard, the governors have a huge role to play because public schools, 90% of kids go to the public schools in your communities. And so if we can provide this sort of training and mentorship and curriculum like Asa and others of you are doing in the public school system, that is the best way to make sure that pipeline is diverse, starts young. We ought to be teaching this in kindergarten and in every grade all the way through. And that's how you capture students and make sure it's diverse and make sure it's the whole community. So, okay, we're going to throw it open to the governors to see what questions or ideas you have for us. Please.
This is Governor Lulian Guerrero from Guam. First, I want to say I'm very impressed that we are increasing female CEOs in our digital and our industry.
I'll clap to that.
I'm right where we want them.
I also want to thank you for information and your strategies and plans and programs to increase digital equity throughout the states. I am concerned, though, that I don't think the Digital Equity Act is too equitable, as Guam and other U.S. territories have been excluded in the Digital Equity Act, in the definition of state. So I have even more of a challenge to try and change that amendment so that Guam and other U.S. territories can take opportunities for the financing and the funding. And of course, my work as governor is to make sure that any future policies, laws, any future direction dealing with digital equity or other services that would benefit the quality of life of my people, I will certainly be fighting hard to get included. I am also very impressed with most of the programs, all of the programs that you have shared with us. I just want to say that I am going to go back to Guam and implement some of these. Although we have already implemented a lot, we have used the Educational Stabilization Fund to provide the hardware to our children out in our island. And we also have used ARP money to provide more broadband services and access using senior citizens community centers, using public library satellites, and so forth. So I think the innovation and the creation and creativity you have shared with us is amazing. I also want to say, Secretary Raimondo, thank you so much also for your leadership in commerce. And also Governor Hutchinson, I appreciate your leadership, and I will go back and include computer science in our curriculum for schools, K through 12.
Excellent.
I don't think that's a hard job. We are a small island, so we can do that probably quicker and faster than any other state in the United States. I also want to just inform you that most of our broadbands are brought in through undersea cable. And that is a risk for us, as you can see what happened with the eruption of the volcano in Tonga, which left 100,000 people just not in communication with the world. So we're looking at seeing how satellites could be a backup. And lastly, I totally support digital technology. That is the future of our whole world. And I think what we're doing here is making the necessary preparation. I also do have a lot of local diverse talent that we will use through apprenticeship programs and so forth. So I just want to say thank you. And I also want to say, don't forget Guam and the U.S. territories, because we do contribute a lot to the national security of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Governor Burgum.
Thank you, Secretary. I want to begin also by commending Governor Hutchinson for his great work and leadership on this. And our panel today, fantastic. Beth, Julie, and Corie. Beth and Corie especially want to thank you for your physical presence in North Dakota and all the work you're doing there. Your vision and ideas are fantastic. And Julie, the apprenticeship example, really powerful one that all of us should pay close attention to. But Madam Secretary, you mentioned flexibility. This is so important. I just want to say, as governors, we're so grateful that not only is there a former governor in the role as Secretary of Commerce, but also someone who's got private sector experience, and you understand that not one size fits all. I think you also understand from our work before that North Dakota is fortunate to be one of the nations that's got most of the broadband to the most number of places. When the pandemic started, we could already reach 99% of the households that had a K-12 student. So more money that's specifically for fiber doesn't help us. The flexibility that you're talking about is essential for us to drive towards some of the initiatives that Governor Hutchinson and your panelists were talking about. One thing I would want to share, in North Dakota in 2019, we started an effort, not just K-12, but we called it PK-20W. So pre-K through PhD through workforce, because everything that we're talking about for K-12, there's a lot of our workforce that's 18 to 75 that needs to be re-educated and has opportunities to get into the workforce with that education as well. And so our mission is every student, every school cyber educated. The thing that's slightly different is that not just computer science, but we're also talking about cybersecurity education. Because when we have everybody connected and we have a world where we're all working together the way we are, and as that got accelerated during the pandemic, as the CEOs described, for us as governors, we have a moral duty around data security. We don't just have transaction data. I mean, we've got criminal justice history data, we've got tax information data, we have health information data, we have school information data, we have fishing and hunting license and driver's license information. I mean, you've got everything you can imagine. A state is controlling that data, and all of us as governors are being increasingly attacked every single day by foreign state actors that are paying their people to attack our states. I mean, it's not like war is theoretical. There's a cyber war going on every single day, and none of us can call the DOD and say, send the troops. We're all defending our data from these attacks that are coming in, and they all accelerated during COVID. So I guess I want to say one last thing that's just a fun thing. Cyber madness. We have our first robotics. I'm sure you've all heard of the great success that Dean Kamen had in building enthusiasm for kids around that. In North Dakota, in this next month, we've launched it. We have 10 high schools, including tribal schools and rural schools, that are going to have their first cybersecurity competition, where the kids are going to come together and show their cyber skills on how they can defend against attacks. So that's going to be very fun coming up, and that's part of this PK-20-Cyber initiative. But for the panelists, I would just say again, all of you are doing, I'm sure, short of cybersecurity people in your companies. I know Accenture, I'm sure this is a core part of your business, but when we talk about computer science, how do we expand it to cybersecurity, and how do we fill the 300,000 or 400,000 cybersecurity jobs that aren't filled in our country?
Yeah, excellent points. Does anyone want to?
Well, I would just add, and I would really want to support what you're saying, is computer science is a foundational skill that we have to get going on. But in fact, what we need are digital literacy skills, and those include cyber. They also include communication skills and critical analysis, because all of these technology skills are going to change over time, and you need the agility of learning, and we spend a lot of time on that. And so, we would encourage you to look more broadly. Sometimes you have to start, so, actually getting a pledge to do computer science. But there is a broader curriculum. There's a couple of very good things out there. Girls Who Code, which is a great organization, actually has a very comprehensive program by grade level that includes things like creativity and problem solving that we would highly encourage to be built into any kind of what we call computer science. And also communication skills are absolutely essential, because we're finding that many of the kids, even if they've had computer science, they don't know how to draft an email and sort of operate, and those skills are really important. And the final thing is, I would really love your focus on pre-K. particularly around reading. Reading is essential for all of these skills, particularly for computer science. And there's a lot of research now that pre-K through third, there needs to be early interventions around reading that will then support students being able to take advantage of the foundational skills. And while we do see students in computer science having better reading, it's really that early intervention that could really change the way. And one of the reasons we're all here is I think corporate America has woken up to the fact that we must help in this K through 12 and really pre-K through 12, because we can't just intervene at high school or create apprenticeships. And so I love what you're focusing on, that you're also doing to pre-K.
You know, the digital literacy point, I think, is really critical, because while we could talk about cybersecurity, and you're right, those jobs, they're wide open, and boy, the job market is very hot. Well, it's hot for all businesses, but certainly for that area. But, you know, our company is an operating company. We have factories, we have distribution facilities, we're making stuff, right? It's a gritty business. We have feed mills, we have dairy processing, we have chemical plants. They all require digital literacy. So while we may point to a particular area in a gap, and I applaud you, we've done some of those same things in different states where we have, you know, coding competitions and things like that as an organization, or robotics competitions. That's terrific. All jobs, fundamental jobs that run the economy, that we've seen this, that are in the economy, really require digital literacy. And the new technology that are in plants and manufacturing locations, et cetera, really demand that. Or you have to have some level of comfort for that. So, you know, trade schools, investments in trade schools are fundamental, foundational. I think it's a place we should focus our attention. And that should include this point on digital literacy. Most manufacturing and assets today really require that.
And the last thing that I would add is I think it's incumbent on all of us then to help our kids understand how digital literacy translates to future opportunity. Your example is actually a lovely one, which is I could actually come back and serve my state by being an amazing cybersecurity expert. I don't know that all our kids think about that as a future path. Or I could have an amazing career behind the scenes in my rural community, and digital literacy will help me with that. And I think making those paths very real, so it's not just about I have to learn this because, it's more it opens these doors for me over time into the future.
Mm-hmm. Governor Mills.
Thank you. Which leads me to a question. We've been focusing in my state on teaching the teachers. We have an aging workforce, aging population. We want to make sure that the teachers in the public school system are computer literate, digitally literate. But it seems to me there's two streams here. One is to beef up the teaching faculty so that they incorporate computer literacy, computer science in their subject matter coursework. And the other is what's being focused on here today, and that is discrete certifications and degrees in computer science per se. And I'm wondering how you meld the two, which is the priority, because that seems to me we don't generally give advanced degrees in reading or advanced degrees in simple math. We expect those talents, those skills to be underlying all other subject matters. You've got to have that as a basics, one of the cornerstones of learning anything. So to what extent do we focus on teaching the teachers to incorporate computer science in their subject matter curriculum? To what extent do we separate out computer sciences and deal with that as a discrete specialty? I mean, we don't want to ignore, we want everybody to have some basic skills. How do we meld the two?
Great question.
Yeah, I will start. You know, I'm not sure, when I'm talking about it, I'm not talking about a degree in computer science. We're talking about digital literacy, something discrete and separate from that in some ways. I mean, some folks will get into computer science, but I was talking to our chief technology officer, and I said the most capable folks in the future will understand the questions to ask. So a doctor now has all of that research at their fingertips because of technology, but the best doctors will know the questions to ask, right? We'll have that touch with an individual, but they have to be technologically savvy and understand how to use different, whether, you know, research, equipment, et cetera. You know, the teaching the teacher is a really important comment. I think you mentioned it. Is there somebody who can really go down this path? But my observation, and I sit on university boards, I think everybody else does, is that we always say, geez, whatever they learn as a freshman is going to be outdated by the time they're seniors. Really what you want are agile and continuous learning pathways. You want to be able to say, you've got to continually update your skills and pay attention and so, yes, teaching the teachers as a foundation, but that teacher is going to have to constantly update their own skills because it's moving that quickly. I mean, literally, it is moving at warp speed. So I'm not sure that's an answer, but what I would observe is it's, for me, less about whether they have a computer science degree. It's more about their literacy, their digital literacy, and their understanding of the questions they need to ask, and then thus the access they can have to get those answers to be effective as an employee.
I think it's an and. I think computer science actually is like reading in the sense that I think you have to actually teach a course so that students know what it is because it is so foundational to understanding technology. And so I do think, as Governor Hutchinson said, having it as a requirement for graduation is important because it's a foundational skill whether or not you go on to be a programmer. There's also, clear evidence that if you're exposed to computer science, you will be more likely to go on and select that as a degree. And as a country, we have not enough, students going into computer science, particularly not enough women. And at the same time, we need to invest to embed digital literacy across coursework. And when you think about communication and collaboration, the ability, my daughter's now in both public and private school, use PowerPoint and use these things as a part of their history class, right? And so we have to be very strategic about embedding it. But I do think that there is a role for computer science, not as a degree in K through 12, but as simply a foundational skill. I do want to give one plug for how you design diversity. I think what Corie said is absolutely critical. And if you listen carefully to what they're doing in their teen centers, and you heard her talk about fashion and all these different things, we did some research a couple of years ago that said at each age, what do you need to do to get more people going into computer science? So it's different in 5th grade versus junior high. But the research also looked at how do you make sure girls go into computer science. And you could actually introduce computer science in a way that does not result in more girls going into computer science because you do have to make it relevant. And so I think making sure that you're designing diversity into the curriculum is really important. And I just wanted to make sure to cover that because I don't think there's enough. And it goes to who the teachers are as well. 26% of girls go into computer science if they don't have an inspiring teacher. 80% go into it when they have an inspiring teacher. I mean, there's a lot of good facts. So you do need to think about diversity by design. And I think what Corie's done is really spectacular in how they've thought about these programs.
Governor Ducey.
Thank you, Secretary Raimondo. It's so good to see you again, and thanks for moderating this panel today. Asa, thanks for your passion on this initiative and the advocacy. I want to thank our guest as well. This has been very helpful to me. Could you speak a little bit, talk about things moving quickly in the cyber world, how the blockchain is affecting your businesses, how digital currency and even the onset of cryptocurrencies are affecting your businesses, and how you're dealing with those issues in the marketplace. And I know it's a deep issue, but I'm just curious, in an overview setting, what you would have to say on those advancements.
You go ahead.
Do you want to start?
No, you go ahead.
So,
I mean, blockchain would probably be most relevant to our business, to my business, versus crypto or other areas. So I can't really speak with any kind of authority on that. I would tell you, blockchain has been a statement that folks are investment that people want for quite some time, but it really takes a partnership, right? Again, you can't just say, well, we're into blockchain, and then nobody else in your continuum is into blockchain. It hasn't been foundational or fundamental to our business, for instance, with retailers. Folks are thinking about using it as a way to show, for instance, in the food supply, it came from this farm, it went through this process, this is how much added cost there was, et cetera. So it's more of a quality measure, and that would give consumers confidence. But still, it's not really embedded yet in the value chain because you really need more people involved and more partners involved in that. So while there might be more discussion of it, it is not central, at least in the food supply. It is thought of as potentially a marketing advantage.
I would agree with that. We are not seeing as much on the retail side because really it's about kind of the very beginning of the product all the way through its production, very relevant in food in particular. From a crypto perspective, for us it's all about adoption and as a means for purchase on the retail side. I think Visa just came out recently, said about $2 billion of purchases now were oriented in some kind of cryptocurrency. And so, like always, what we're trying to assess is when do you get to an adoption level across our demand profile that makes it something we need to really consider how we want to interact with our consumers because they're so comfortable using it. I'd say broadly in retail, we're not quite there yet on the tipping point, though it's getting closer and closer as more currencies are adopted. I think what's tricky right now is you have so many currencies, each pretty volatile at this point in time, and then you also have retailers trying to figure out what their own status might be with their own currencies and whether or not they want to take on that as kind of their next level of innovation. So I'd call it broadly across retail, kind of in the very early stages, but like anything, we're going to take the biggest hints from our consumers, and as we see them ready to interact, we need to be, as quickly as we can, there for them.
We're pretty much out of time. Governor Gordon's had his hand up, though, so I'd like to give you the last word.
Thank you, Secretary Raimondo, and a great panel, and Wyoming being sort of the home of some of the pioneering stuff on blockchain and cryptocurrency. I'd love to talk on that, but really my concern is as we deploy all of this, and I think that, Governor Burgum's point about flexibility is absolutely imperative. But as we deploy this, and we talked a little bit about, this will depreciate. So in those markets where, the tremendous amount of money that's now available to sort of help build out fiber and network, the question I have is how do we maintain that so that in a few years' time we don't end up with the same kinds of inequities that we had before? Because those markets didn't get served for a reason, and how do we make sure that we have those markets supported over time?
Yeah, such a good question. Let me say two things.
You work for him?
Sorry, let me say two things. I was quite involved in negotiating the broadband component of the law with Congress, and as a former governor, felt very strongly flexibility was necessary for exactly the reason that you said. You all have broadband inequities in your state, and they're different in every state, so the solution has to be different. So I want every one of you to stay in close touch with me and my team as we go through this to make sure that every state is going to have to put together a state plan that speaks to the needs in your state. And so I can't say that enough. Secondly, a huge part of the reason that ISPs and others don't serve every community is because there hasn't been enough money to be made in those communities, if we're really honest about it, which is the whole point of this $65 billion. So we need to all structure the implementation of this money to make sure that we provide enough of an incentive for ISPs and other providers, municipal providers, middle mile providers, co-ops, nonprofits, et cetera, to actually lay the fiber or do the fixed wireless or do the technology in these communities that have heretofore been touched. And that is the challenge before us, and we have to make sure that this too will be a public-private partnership. In order to get this money, they are going to have to put skin in the game themselves and ensure to us that they will reach these communities that are more expensive to reach, and that they will do so by providing affordable plans, as we go forward. So it's an excellent point, and I think kind of a key principle of the whole way we're going to implement it. Okay, we are officially out of time. I think this has been a great panel. Please join me in thanking these three amazing women. I will say this, you really are models of corporate leaders who are doing a fantastic job leading your companies very successfully and making time to be patriotic and civically minded, and we're all better off for it, so thank you. Asa, we'll give the last word to you.
Gina, thank you so much. What an incredible panel. Secretary, you make us proud as a former governor, and your leadership role now, your understanding of what governors face. And to each of the panelists, you all have done an extraordinary job. Corie, Beth, and Julie, thanks for giving up your time today. Great example of corporate leadership. And this is amazing, the governor's interest in this. And I draw your attention, governors, that in your briefing book, there should be the draft compact. And I know how people are hesitant, but I look over there, and Governor Sununu, I think, has already read it. He recognized he's not going to be signing his life away, or his freedom.
Good.
So it's basic. It's a commitment. It's saying we want to support computer science education and has some priorities there. But I think that all of you will see that as something you hopefully can support. It does take a commitment, but take a look at that. And then I just remind you that the dates are March 16th and 17th in Bentonville, and then Boston is May 18th and 19th. So you might note those dates as options for the future. With that, I know we're hungry. Let's give the panel and Gina another round of applause.